The morning fog hung heavy over Chicago's Union Station as I clutched my coffee cup, watching Richard pace back and forth near Track 12. Our entire marketing team had been called to this ungodly early meeting, something about the Morrison Hotels account that we'd been chasing for 6 months. The sound of arriving trains echoed through the Grand Hall, mixing with the chatter of morning commuters. "Listen up, everyone," Richard barked, his voice cutting through the ambient noise. "Morrison's CEO is flying in today for the final presentation. This is our biggest opportunity this year, and I won't have any weak links." I shifted uncomfortably, knowing that look in his eyes. For the past 3 years at Pinnacle Creative, I'd been the invisible member of the team. While my colleagues, Brian, Jessica, and Ryan got the spotlight projects, I was stuck with data entry and client scheduling. Fresh out of Northwestern with a marketing degree, I'd started here full of dreams. Now at 25, I felt like I was drowning in mediocrity. "Mia," Richard's sharp voice snapped me back to reality. "You'll handle the logistics today. Make sure the presentation room is ready, coordinate with catering, that sort of thing." "But I actually have some ideas for the Morrison campaign," I began, my voice barely audible over a departing train announcement. Richard's laugh was bitter. He turned to the group, not even bothering to lower his voice. "Ideas? From her." He gestured dismissively in my direction. "Look, team, I'll be honest with you. She's useless when it comes to anything creative. We keep her around for the grunt work, but let's not pretend she belongs in client meetings." The words hit me like a physical blow. Brian looked uncomfortable and stared at his shoes. Jessica exchanged a meaningful glance with Ryan. The bustling energy of the station continued around us, indifferent to my humiliation. "Richard," that's Brian started, but Richard cut him off. "What?" "True. I know it sounds harsh, but this is business. Morrison Hotels is worth $12 million in billings. I can't afford to have someone stumbling through presentations or offering amateur insights." My cheeks burned with embarrassment. 3 years of arriving early, staying late, of perfecting every spreadsheet and coordinating every meeting down to the last detail reduced to grunt work. I wanted to disappear into the crowd of commuters rushing to their trains. "The Morrison CEO should be here any minute," Richard continued, straightening his tie. "Brian, you'll present our social media strategy. Jessica handles the rebranding concepts. Ryan covers the digital advertising approach. And Mia," he paused, almost as an afterthought, "just try not to mess up the coffee order." I stood frozen, my half-empty coffee cup trembling slightly in my hands. Around us, the station hummed with life business people checking their phones, families saying goodbye, the rhythmic announcement of arrivals and departures. Everyone seemed to know exactly where they were going, exactly what they were supposed to do. Everyone except me. That's when I heard the voice. "Excuse me, are you from Pinnacle Creative?" We all turned toward the sound. A woman in her late 50s approached us, dressed in an impeccable navy suit, her silver hair perfectly styled despite the early hour. She carried herself with the kind of confidence that commanded attention even in the chaos of Union Station. "Yes." Richard immediately stepped forward, his demeanor shifting into full charm mode. "You must be Catherine Morrison. I'm Richard Thompson, creative director. So wonderful to finally meet you in person." But Catherine Morrison wasn't looking at Richard. Her eyes were scanning our group until they landed on me. "Actually," she said, her voice warm but decisive, "I'm looking for Mia Rodriguez." The silence that followed was deafening. Even the ambient noise of the station seemed to fade. Richard's confident smile faltered. Brian, Jessica, and Ryan all turned to stare at me with expressions ranging from confusion to shock. I'm Mia," I managed, my voice barely a whisper. Catherine Morrison's face lit up with a genuine smile. "Perfect. I was hoping I'd find you here. We have so much to discuss." Richard stepped forward, clearly trying to regain control. "Mrs. Morrison, I think there might be some confusion. Mia is more of our administrative support. I'm sure you meant to ask for me, or perhaps Brian here, who leads our—" "No confusion at all," Catherine interrupted, her tone polite but firm. "I specifically asked for Mia Rodriguez. I believe she's the one who's been sending me those incredibly detailed project updates and market analysis reports over the past few months." My heart stopped. "Those reports," I'd been sending them directly to Morrison Hotels as part of my administrative duties, not realizing they were going straight to the CEO. I'd spend hours researching their competitors, analyzing their current marketing gaps, crafting detailed observations about their brand positioning. I thought I was just being thorough with client communications. Those reports I started, then stopped, acutely aware that everyone was staring at me. "We're brilliant," Catherine finished. "Exactly the kind of strategic thinking we've been missing from other agencies. The way you identified the gap in our boutique hotel positioning, your analysis of our demographic blind spots, frankly, it's why I chose to come to Chicago personally instead of just sending my team." Richard's face had gone pale. "Mrs. Morrison, surely you want to hear from our senior strategists." "What I want," Catherine said, her voice taking on a slightly steely edge, "is to work with the person who actually understands my business. And from what I can tell, that person is Mia." The morning sun had begun to burn through the fog, sending shafts of light through the station's massive windows. In that moment, standing there with Chicago's busiest train station swirling around us, I felt something shift inside me. For 3 years, I'd been invisible. For 3 years, I'd accepted that I wasn't good enough, creative enough, valuable enough. But Catherine Morrison, CEO of a $100 million hotel chain, was asking for me. "I'd like to invite you to lunch," Catherine continued, addressing me directly while the rest of my team stood in stunned silence. "Just you and me. I have some ideas about how we might work together, and I'd love to hear more of your thoughts on our brand direction." Richard opened his mouth, probably to suggest that he join us, but Catherine's expression made it clear this was not a group invitation. "What do you say, Mia? Are you free?" I looked at Richard, whose face was cycling through emotions like a broken traffic light. I looked at my teammates, who were staring at me like I'd suddenly grown a second head. Then I looked at Catherine Morrison, successful, confident, asking for my time and my ideas. "Yes," I said, and for the first time in months, my voice was steady. "I'd love to have lunch with you." As we began walking away from the group, I heard Richard calling after us, something about scheduling a proper team meeting, about wanting to discuss integrated solutions. But Catherine simply waved over her shoulder without turning around. "Tell me, Mia," she said as we made our way through the crowd toward the station's exit. "In your reports, you mentioned that Morrison Hotels should consider targeting the authentic experience market rather than competing with luxury chains. What exactly did you mean by that?" And as I began to explain my ideas that someone actually wanted to hear, I realized that everything was about to change. The restaurant Catherine chose was a small bistro tucked away on a quiet street in River North, far from the tourist crowds and business lunch hotspots. As we settled into a corner booth with large windows overlooking the Chicago River, I tried to calm my racing heart. The morning's events still felt surreal. "You seem nervous," Catherine observed, stirring honey into her tea. Her manner was warm but direct, the kind of person who didn't waste time on small talk. "I am," I admitted. "This morning has been unexpected." She laughed, a rich sound that immediately put me at ease. "I imagine so. Richard Thompson certainly seemed surprised when I asked for you specifically. Can I ask you something?" I leaned forward slightly. "How did you even know my name?" "Richard handles all the client communications." Catherine raised an eyebrow. "Does he?" "Because for the past 4 months, every email I've received from Pinnacle Creative has been signed Mia Rodriguez, account coordinator. Every report, every project update, every piece of strategic analysis, all from you." My stomach dropped. Those were supposed to go through Richard first. I was trying to be thorough. He told me to handle client communications, so "You took initiative," Catherine finished. "You saw what needed to be done and you did it. Do you have any idea how rare that is in this industry?" I shook my head, still processing. "But Richard said I was just handling administrative work. He never mentioned that you were actually reading my reports." "Administrative work?" Catherine's tone sharpened. "Mia, your market analysis of our competitor landscape was more insightful than reports I've paid $50,000 for. Your demographic research identified market segments we'd completely overlooked. That breakdown you sent about boutique hotel trends in secondary markets, my board is still talking about it." The waiter appeared to take our order, giving me a moment to absorb what she was saying. 4 months, I'd been pouring my best ideas into those reports, thinking they were just detailed administrative updates. Meanwhile, the CEO of Morrison Hotels had been reading every word. I have to ask, Catherine continued once we were alone again, why were you working on strategic analysis if your role is administrative? I stared out the window at the river, watching a tour boat navigate the choppy water. Because I couldn't help myself, I suppose. Every time I researched your hotels for scheduling or logistics, I'd notice things. Opportunities. Problems that seemed fixable. I have a marketing degree from Northwestern, and I guess I was trying to prove to myself that I still remembered how to think strategically. To yourself. Richard made it pretty clear that I wasn't cut out for creative work. After 3 years of being assigned to spreadsheets and scheduling, you start to wonder if maybe he's right. Catherine was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was thoughtful. Tell me about your background, Mia. How did you end up at Pinnacle Creative? I found myself opening up in a way I hadn't in years. I told her about graduating with honors, about the interview process, where Richard seemed impressed with my portfolio, about the promise of working on major accounts that never materialized. I described the slow erosion of my confidence as I watched other junior employees get promoted while I remained stuck in the same role. And you never said anything? Never asked for more responsibility? I tried a few times, but Richard always had reasons why I wasn't ready. He'd say I needed more experience, or that I didn't understand the client's needs well enough, or that I was too academic in my thinking. I paused, remembering. About a year ago, I prepared this whole presentation about expanding into experiential marketing. I thought it was good work, but Richard barely glanced at it. He said it showed I didn't understand real-world business constraints. Catherine's expression had grown increasingly serious as I talked. Can I share something with you, Mia? In my 30 years in business, I've learned to recognize talent. Real talent. It's not always the loudest voice in the room or the person with the most polished presentation. Sometimes it's the person who's been quietly doing exceptional work while everyone else takes credit. Our food arrived, but I barely noticed. I was hanging on every word. Your reports didn't just show me market data, she continued. They showed me you understood my business better than I understood it myself in some areas. That segment analysis you did of experience-seeking millennials with disposable income, we restructured our entire marketing approach for 3 properties based on that insight. You did! Revenue at those properties is up 37% this quarter. I nearly choked on my water. 37%. Which brings me to why I wanted to have lunch with you today. Catherine leaned back in her seat, studying me carefully. Morrison Hotels is looking for a new marketing director. Someone to lead strategy for our expansion into secondary markets. It's a big job managing a team of 12, overseeing campaigns across 43 properties, working directly with our executive team. My heart started pounding again. That sounds like an incredible opportunity. It is. And I'd like you to consider taking it. The words hung in the air between us. I stared at her, certain I'd misheard. Me? You, Mia. I've spent the last 4 months evaluating your work, without you even knowing it. You've been essentially doing the job already, just without the title or the salary. But I've never managed a team. I've never led major campaigns. Richard was right about my experience. Catherine held up a hand. Richard Thompson has been underutilizing you for 3 years. That says more about his judgment than your capabilities. The question is, are you ready to stop letting other people define your worth? I thought about that morning at the station. About Richard's dismissive words, about the way my teammates had looked at me when Catherine asked for me specifically. About 3 years of being invisible despite my best efforts. The position comes with a salary of $120,000, plus performance bonuses, Catherine continued. Full benefits for weeks vacation, and a team of people who actually want to hear your ideas. $120,000. I was currently making $38,000 at Pinnacle Creative. I need to ask, I said slowly. Why me? You could hire someone with more experience, more credentials. Catherine smiled. Because experience isn't the same as insight. Because credentials don't guarantee understanding. And because in 4 months of working with Pinnacle Creative, you're the only person who's shown me something I hadn't already thought of myself. She reached into her purse and pulled out a business card. I'm flying back to Portland tomorrow afternoon. If you're interested, I'd like you to come with me. Meet the team, see the corporate office, get a feel for what we're building. Tomorrow! My voice came out as a squeak. I know it's fast, but I've learned not to waste time when I find the right person. The hotel industry moves quickly, and we have 3 new properties launching in the next 6 months. I need someone who can hit the ground running. I took the business card with trembling fingers. Catherine Morrison, CEO, Morrison Hotels. Her direct phone number was written on the back in elegant handwriting. What about Pinnacle Creative? What about my current job? What about it? Catherine's tone was matter-of-fact. Mia, I watched your boss humiliate you in front of your colleagues this morning. I heard him call you useless. Is that really the environment where you want to build your career? I thought about Richard's words at the station, about the look on my teammates' faces, about 3 years of being overlooked and undervalued. I need some time to think, I said finally. Of course, but not too much time. Catherine signaled for the check. I'll be at the Palmer House until tomorrow at noon. Call me by then either way. As we walked back toward downtown, Catherine shared more details about Morrison Hotels, their expansion plans, the challenges they were facing. Her enthusiasm was infectious, and I found myself asking detailed questions about market positioning and competitive analysis. See, she said as we paused outside the Pinnacle Creative Building. You're already thinking like a marketing director. The only question is whether you're ready to act like one. I looked up at the familiar glass facade where I'd spent 3 years feeling invisible. Through the lobby windows, I could see Richard pacing in the reception area, probably waiting for me to return so he could do damage control with Catherine Morrison. He's going to be furious, I murmured. Good, Catherine said firmly. Fury is what happens when incompetent people lose control. You've been managing his reputation with me for months without even knowing it. Time for you to start managing your own. She hailed a taxi, then turned back to me. Mia, whatever you decide, don't let fear make the choice for you. I've built my company by betting on people who others overlooked. So far, it's worked out pretty well. As her taxi pulled away, I stood on the sidewalk staring up at the Pinnacle Creative offices. Through the window, I could see Richard still pacing. Behind him, Brian, Jessica, and Ryan were clustered around the reception desk, probably discussing the morning's bizarre events. For 3 years, this building had represented everything I thought I wanted. Now it felt like a cage I'd been too afraid to leave. I pulled out my phone and looked at Catherine's business card again. Tomorrow at noon. Less than 24 hours to make a decision that would change everything. Taking a deep breath, I walked through the familiar glass doors, ready to face whatever came next. The elevator ride to the 15th floor felt endless. Through the glass walls, I could see Richard in the conference room, gesturing dramatically while Brian, Jessica, and Ryan sat around the table looking shell-shocked. As soon as the elevator doors opened, our receptionist, Mrs. Patterson, looked up with barely concealed excitement. Mia, Richard's been looking for you. He wants to see you in his office immediately. I nodded, my stomach churning. The familiar hallway seemed longer than usual, lined with awards and client photos that suddenly felt like they belonged to someone else's life. Richard's corner office door was open, and he was standing behind his desk, his face flushed with what looked like a mixture of anger and panic. Close the door, he said without preamble. I complied and took a seat across from his desk, the same chair where I'd sat countless times over the past 3 years, usually while he assigned me yet another administrative task. What the hell was that this morning? He didn't wait for me to answer. Catherine Morrison specifically asked for you. You someone who's never even been in a client presentation. How does that happen, Mia? I've been sending her the project reports, I said quietly. Like you asked me to. Project reports? I asked you to send scheduling updates and meeting confirmations. You asked me to handle client communications. So I did. Richard ran his hands through his hair, pacing behind his desk. What exactly have you been sending her? I straightened in my chair. Market analysis, competitive research, strategic recommendations, the kind of information I thought a client would want to see. Strategic recommendations? His voice rose. Mia, you're an account coordinator. You don't make strategic recommendations to our biggest potential client without running them by me first. You never asked to see them. Because I never thought you were capable of, he stopped himself, but the words hung in the air anyway. Capable of what, Richard? Thinking strategically, providing value to clients. For the first time in 3 years, I felt my voice gaining strength. Catherine Morrison told me she restructured 3 properties based on my analysis. Revenue is up 37%. Richard's face went pale. She told you what? The reports I've been sending her, the ones you dismissed as administrative work, she's been using them to make business decisions. Real decisions that generated real results. There was a long silence. Richard sank into his chair, staring at me as if seeing me for the first time. "This is a disaster," he muttered, more to himself than to me. Morrison Hotels was supposed to be my big win this quarter. I've been positioning this account as proof that I'm ready for the regional director role. I watched him process the implications. His useless employee had been the one actually impressing the client. His carefully orchestrated presentation had been upstaged before it even began. "Look, Mia," he said finally, his tone shifting to something approximating conciliation. "Obviously, there's been some miscommunication here. I think what we need to do is schedule a proper team meeting with Morrison. You can be there, of course, but I should take the lead on. She offered me a job." The words came out before I'd consciously decided to say them. Richard's mouth fell open. "She what?" "Catherine Morrison offered me a position. Marketing director at Morrison Hotels." Richard stood up, so quickly his chair rolled backward into the window. She can't do work for me." "You have a contract." "An at-will contract," I corrected. "And I haven't accepted her offer." Yet. He laughed, but it sounded forced. "Mia, be realistic. You've never managed a team. You've never run a major campaign. You don't have the experience for a director role." 3 hours ago, those words would have crushed me. Now they just sounded hollow. What experience did I need to write reports that helped generate a 37% revenue increase? That's different. That's just research and analysis, which is exactly what marketing directors do. They research markets, analyze data, and develop strategies based on insights. Richard's face was cycling through emotions again. "This is insane. You're talking about leaving a stable job at an established agency to work for someone you met this morning. Someone who recognizes my value," I said quietly. "Someone who actually reads my work instead of dismissing it as administrative busywork." "I never dismissed. This morning at the train station, you called me useless in front of our entire team." The words hit him like a physical blow. He opened his mouth, closed it, then sat back down heavily. I was under pressure. "The Morrison account is worth $12 million inch. And you were willing to humiliate me to protect it, even though, as it turns out, I was the reason they were interested in working with us in the first place." We sat in silence for a moment. Through the window, I could see the Chicago River where I'd had lunch with Catherine just hours earlier. The contrast was stark, that bright, possibility-filled conversation versus the stale office where I'd slowly been convinced I wasn't good enough. "What would it take to keep you here?" Richard asked finally. I looked at him with surprise. "Are you serious?" "Dead serious. I can't lose the Morrison account, and apparently they want you. So what would it take? A promotion? A raise?" For a moment, I felt a flicker of the old Mia, the one who would have been grateful for any acknowledgement, any crumb of professional respect. But then I thought about Catherine's words. "Don't let fear make the choice for you." "It's not about money, Richard." "Then what?" I stood up, gathering my confidence like armor. "It's about being seen. For 3 years, I've been invisible here. You've had me doing work that was beneath my capabilities while telling me I wasn't ready for anything more challenging. Meanwhile, I was already doing director-level work. I just didn't realize it because you convinced me it was just administrative support. I was trying to give you a solid foundation." "You were keeping me small," I interrupted. "And maybe you didn't do it intentionally, but that's what happened. Catherine Morrison saw something in my work that you never bothered to look for." Richard's expression shifted, and for a moment, I saw something that might have been regret. "Mia, I know I haven't always been the most supportive manager." "No, you haven't. And it's too late to fix that now." I walked toward the door, then paused with my hand on the handle. "I'm flying to Portland tomorrow to meet with Catherine's team. I'll submit my resignation letter tonight." "Wait!" Richard's voice was desperate now. "What if I made you a senior account manager? $45,000. Your own office, direct client contact. I turned back to face him. Catherine offered me $120,000 to lead a team of 12 and oversee campaigns for 43 properties. The number hung in the air between us. Richard's face went through several expressions before settling on defeated resignation. I didn't realize she was that serious about you. That's the problem, Richard. You never realize how serious anyone could be about me, including me. I left his office and walked back to my small desk in the open area, acutely aware that my conversation had been visible through the glass walls. Brian, Jessica, and Ryan were pretending to work, but I could feel their eyes on me. As I began cleaning out my desk drawers, Jessica approached tentatively. Is it true? Morrison offered you a job? Yes. And you're taking it? I looked up at her. Jessica and I had started at Pinnacle Creative within a month of each other, but she'd been promoted twice while I'd remained in the same role. I'd always assumed it was because she was more talented, more deserving. Now I wondered if it was simply because Richard had never bothered to look at my work the way Catherine had. I think so. That's amazing, Mia. I had no idea you were even looking for another job. I wasn't, but sometimes opportunities find you when you're not looking for them. Brian and Ryan came over then, and for the first time in 3 years, my colleagues seemed genuinely interested in what I had to say. I found myself telling them about the reports I'd been writing, about Catherine's response to my work, about the revenue increases at the Morrison properties. You did all that analysis on your own time? Ryan asked, incredulous. I thought it was part of my job. Richard told me to handle client communications, so I tried to make them as useful as possible. That's incredible, Brian said. I mean, no wonder Morrison was interested in working with us. Those insights about boutique hotel positioning, that's graduate-level strategic thinking. It was the first time any of them had acknowledged my capabilities, and I realized they probably hadn't known about my work any more than Richard had. They'd all been operating under the assumption that I was just the administrative support person, because that's how Richard had positioned me. As I packed my personal items into a cardboard box, I felt a strange mixture of sadness and relief. This place had been my professional home for 3 years, but it had also been a place where I'd slowly lost confidence in myself, where I'd accepted being diminished. Mrs. Patterson appeared at my desk with a small potted plant. I thought you might want this, she said quietly. You gave it to me when I was going through my divorce last year. Said it would bring good luck. I remembered. Mrs. Patterson had been struggling, and I'd brought her a small succulent from my apartment, hoping it might brighten her workspace. Keep it, I said. I think my luck is changing on its own. She smiled, the kind of warm smile that told me at least someone at Pinnacle Creative had seen me as more than just administrative support. As I carried my box toward the elevator, Richard emerged from his office. Mia, wait! I turned back to him. For what it's worth, he said, his voice different than I'd ever heard it. I think you're making the right choice. And I'm sorry it took Catherine Morrison to make me realize what we were losing. It wasn't quite an apology, but it was closer than I'd expected. Thank you, Richard. That means something. The elevator doors closed, and as I descended toward the lobby, I pulled out my phone and found Catherine Morrison's number. My hands were shaking slightly as I dialed. Mia, she answered on the second ring. I was hoping to hear from you. I'd like to accept your offer, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. And I'd love to fly to Portland with you tomorrow. Excellent. I'll have my assistant arrange the details. And Mia. Yes. Welcome to the team. I have a feeling this is going to be the beginning of something remarkable. As I walked out of the Pinnacle Creative building for the last time, carrying my cardboard box and Catherine's business card, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Excitement about my future. Tomorrow I would be on a plane to Portland, starting a new chapter of my life with someone who saw my potential instead of my limitations. The late afternoon sun was breaking through the Chicago clouds, casting everything in golden light. For the first time in 3 years, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. The flight to Portland was turbulent, but I barely noticed. I spent most of the 3-hour journey reviewing materials Catherine had given me about Morrison hotels, taking notes on everything from their brand positioning to their expansion timeline. She sat across the aisle, occasionally glancing over with an approving smile when she saw me deep in research mode. Nervous? She asked as we began our descent into PDX. Excited. I corrected and realized it was true. The knot in my stomach wasn't anxiety, it was anticipation. Morrison Hotel's corporate headquarters occupied the top 3 floors of a sleek building in downtown Portland, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of the Willamette River and Mount Hood. As Catherine led me through the modern, open-concept workspace, I was struck by the energy of the place. People looked engaged, collaborative. There was none of the territorial tension I'd grown accustomed to at Pinnacle Creative. The marketing team is on the 22nd floor, Catherine explained as we stepped out of the elevator. I want you to meet them before we talk about specifics. The marketing department was a buzz of activity. Unlike the sterile cubicle farm at my old job, this space featured comfortable lounge areas, collaborative workstations, and walls covered with campaign materials and market research. A group of people looked up as we approached, their faces curious but welcoming. Everyone, I'd like you to meet Mia Rodriguez, Catherine announced. She's the strategic mind behind those Morrison Hotels reports we've been discussing. A woman in her 30s with short auburn hair stepped forward first. I'm Lisa, VP of Marketing. I have to tell you, your analysis of our competitor landscape was brilliant. We've been struggling to articulate why we were losing market share in secondary cities, and your report nailed it in 5 pages. The demographic segmentation piece was what really got my attention, added a younger man with glasses. I'm Tom, Senior Data Analyst. Your identification of that authentic experience segment, we've completely restructured our customer personas around that insight. I felt a familiar warmth spreading through my chest, the same feeling I'd had during lunch with Catherine the day before. These people had actually read my work. More than that, they'd found value in it. Your timing is perfect, said an older woman with silver-streaked hair. I'm Janet, Creative Director. We're in the middle of developing campaigns for 3 new properties, and we've been stuck on how to differentiate from the luxury chains. Your recommendations about targeting experience seekers instead of luxury seekers, that's exactly the direction we needed. Catherine watched the interaction with visible satisfaction. I thought you'd all get along well. Mia brings a fresh perspective, but more importantly, she understands the business fundamentals. We spent the next hour in a conference room with spectacular river views, discussing Morrison Hotel's challenges and opportunities. I found myself fully engaged in a way I hadn't been in years, offering ideas and insights while the team asked thoughtful follow-up questions. Nobody dismissed my suggestions or talked over me. Nobody treated me like the administrative assistant who'd wandered into the wrong meeting. The secondary markets are our biggest opportunity, Lisa was saying. Cities like Boise, Eugene, Spokane, places where business travelers want something more interesting than a standard chain hotel, but where luxury brands haven't bothered to establish a presence. Exactly, I replied, pulling out my notes. And those markets have growing populations of remote workers and digital nomads who stay longer than traditional business travelers. They want authentic local experiences, but they also need reliable Wi-Fi and workspaces. That's where Morrison can differentiate. Tom nodded enthusiastically. We'd been thinking about extended stay packages, but we weren't sure how to position them. Position them as work cations, I suggested. Partner with local co-working spaces, offer curated experiences that highlight local culture, create packages that let people feel like they're living like a local rather than just visiting. Janet was taking rapid notes. That could work beautifully with the visual identity we've been developing. More authentic, less corporate. The conversation continued for another 30 minutes, and I realized this was what I'd been missing at Pinnacle Creative, the collaborative exchange of ideas, the sense that everyone's input was valued. When Catherine finally suggested we wrap up, I felt energized rather than drained. I need to steal Mia for a few minutes, Catherine told the team. But I hope this won't be the last time you all work together. She led me to her corner office, which was elegantly appointed but not ostentatious. The walls featured photos from Morrison Hotel's properties mixed with personal pictures, family gatherings, travel adventures, moments that suggested a life well lived beyond the corporate world. So, Catherine said, settling into the chair across from me rather than behind her desk. What do you think? I think I want to be part of this, I said without hesitation. The team is incredible, the challenges are exactly the kind I want to tackle, and the culture here, it's everything I hoped a professional environment could be. Catherine smiled. I'm glad you feel that way, because I have a proposition for you that's even bigger than we discussed yesterday. My eyebrows rose. Bigger how? How would you feel about leading the launch of Morrison Hotel's new boutique division? I stared at her. New boutique division. It's something we've been considering for months, but we haven't had the right person to spearhead it. Your insights about authentic experiences in secondary markets, that's exactly what we want this division to represent. She pulled out a tablet and showed me a presentation titled Morrison Authentic, Boutique Hotels for the Experience Economy. We're planning to launch 5 properties in the next 18 months, Catherine explained. Converted historic buildings in cities like Asheville, Bend, Boulder, Burlington, and Bozeman, each one designed to reflect local culture and cater to travelers who want to feel connected to the places they visit. I scrolled through the presentation, my excitement building with each slide. Historic brick buildings transformed into boutique hotels, local artist partnerships, farm-to-table restaurants featuring regional cuisine, co-working spaces integrated into lobby designs. It was everything I'd been thinking about during those late nights writing reports at Pinnacle Creative, but elevated to a scale I'd never imagined. This is incredible, I breathed. But leading an entire division launch, Catherine, I've never done anything close to this magnitude. Neither had I when I started Morrison Hotels 25 years ago, she replied. I was a junior manager at a chain hotel company, convinced I wasn't ready for anything bigger. Then someone gave me a chance to prove what I could do. She closed the tablet and leaned forward. Mia, I didn't offer you this position because you have all the experience already. I offered it because you have something rarer than experience. You have vision. You see opportunities that others miss. You understand markets intuitively. But a whole division would have a dedicated team. Lisa would oversee the overall marketing integration. Tom would handle data analysis and performance metrics. Janet would lead creative development. You'd have a budget of $2.5 million for the first year and complete autonomy to build a brand identity and marketing strategy. $2.5 million. Complete autonomy. A dedicated team. The magnitude of the opportunity was almost overwhelming. I need you to know, Catherine continued, this isn't charity or some feel-good gesture about giving people chances. This is pure business. Morrison Hotels is betting on your strategic thinking because we believe it will generate substantial returns. She opened her laptop and showed me a financial projection. Based on your market analysis, we're projecting the boutique division will generate $15 million in revenue by year 2, with profit margins 20% higher than our traditional properties. I stared at the numbers. You're basing that on my reports? On your insights about underserved markets and authentic experiences, yes. The financial team ran models based on your demographic analysis, and the numbers are compelling. My phone buzzed with a text message. Without thinking, I glanced at a message from Jessica at Pinnacle Creative. Richard is freaking out. Apparently Morrison canceled their contract this afternoon. I showed the message to Catherine, who smiled grimly. I called Richard after our flight took off. Told him Morrison Hotels would be ending our relationship with Pinnacle Creative effective immediately. Because of me leaving. Because of how he treated you. Because any agency that would waste talent like yours isn't an agency we want to work with. Her expression softened. But also because we're bringing marketing in-house. With you leading the boutique division, it makes sense to consolidate all our marketing efforts internally. The implications hit me. By hiring me, Catherine wasn't just giving me a career opportunity, she was completely restructuring how Morrison Hotels approached marketing. The decision carried significant financial and strategic weight. That's a lot of faith to put in someone you've known for less than 48 hours. Is it? Mia, I've been evaluating your work for 4 months. I've seen how you think, how you solve problems, how you communicate insights. Most hiring decisions are based on much less information than I have about you. She stood and walked to the window, gazing out at the Portland skyline. When I was 26, I had an opportunity similar to this one. A chance to leave a safe job and help launch a small hotel company that nobody had heard of. I almost said no because I was scared I wasn't ready. But you said yes. I said yes, and it changed everything. Not just my career, my entire life. The confidence I gained from succeeding at something I wasn't sure I could do, that became the foundation for everything else I accomplished. She turned back to me. The question isn't whether you're ready, Mia. The question is whether you're brave enough to find out what you're capable of. I thought about the past 3 years at Pinnacle Creative, the gradual erosion of my confidence, the way I'd started to believe Richard's assessment of my limitations, how small my world had become. Then I thought about yesterday morning at Union Station, the moment when Catherine asked for me specifically, and everything shifted. If I say yes, I said slowly, when would I start? Monday. The Asheville property is our pilot project. We're converting a 1920s textile mill into a 40-room boutique hotel. Construction is nearly finished, and we need to launch marketing efforts immediately if we want to open by spring. Monday. 4 days from now. The timeline was aggressive, but something about the urgency excited me rather than intimidated me. What happens if I fail? Catherine's smile was confident. You won't. But if you did, you'd fail trying to do something remarkable rather than succeeding at something mediocre. I'd rather bet on someone who aims high and falls short than someone who aims low and hits their target. I pulled out my phone and looked at it again. No new messages from Chicago, but I could imagine the chaos at Pinnacle Creative as they dealt with losing Morrison Hotels. Richard would be scrambling to explain to his superiors how his useless employee had walked away with their biggest potential client. Mia! Catherine's voice was gentle but expectant. I looked up at her, then out the window at the Portland skyline. Somewhere out there, in cities like Asheville and Bend and Boulder, there were historic buildings waiting to be transformed into something special. There were travelers looking for authentic experiences. There were opportunities to create something new and meaningful. And there was a version of myself I'd never had the chance to meet, the version who led teams and launched divisions and made decisions that affected millions of dollars in revenue. Yes, I said, my voice steady and clear. I want to lead Morrison Authentic. Catherine's smile was radiant. Welcome aboard, Director Rodriguez. Director Rodriguez. The title sent a thrill through me that had nothing to do with ego and everything to do with possibility. We spent the next 2 hours going through practical details: salary, benefits, start date, initial priorities. Catherine introduced me to the executive team via video conference, and I found myself discussing market entry strategies and brand positioning with VPs and senior directors who treated my opinions as valuable from the first moment. As the evening approached, Catherine suggested we have dinner to celebrate, but I had a different request. Would it be possible to visit the Asheville property? I know it's a detour, but I'd love to see what we're working with. Catherine's eyes lit up. I was hoping you'd ask. My plane is already fueled for the trip. 2 hours later, we were landing at a small airport in North Carolina as the sun set behind the Blue Ridge Mountains. The drive to downtown Asheville took us through winding mountain roads lined with autumn foliage, past craft breweries and art galleries, and the kind of authentic local businesses I'd written about in my reports. The Morrison Authentic Asheville property sat on a quiet street in the Arts District, its brick facade glowing under construction lights. Even covered in scaffolding and surrounded by equipment, the building was magnificent, 6 stories of early 20th century industrial architecture that would soon house something entirely new. The ground floor will be a restaurant featuring local ingredients, Catherine explained as we walked through the construction site with hard hats. The second floor has co-working spaces and meeting rooms. Floors 3 through 6 are guest rooms, each one unique but all reflecting local craftsmanship. I could envision it perfectly: business travelers working in the co-working space during the day, then exploring Asheville's music scene at night. Weekend guests browsing local art galleries and hiking mountain trails. The building serving as a bridge between visitors and the authentic Asheville experience. It's perfect, I said, and meant it. It will be, once you figure out how to tell its story to the world. We drove back to the airport under a canopy of stars, discussing ideas for the launch campaign. I found myself thinking not just about marketing tactics, but about the broader mission of Morrison Authentic, creating places where travelers could have genuine connections with local communities. Catherine, I said as we boarded the plane back to Portland, thank you. Not just for the job, but for seeing something in me that I'd stopped seeing in myself. She paused in the cabin doorway, silhouetted against the terminal lights. Mia, I didn't give you anything you didn't already have. I just gave you a place to use it. As we took off into the night sky, I pulled out my laptop and began drafting ideas for the Morrison Authentic brand launch. Below us, The lights of small cities dotted the landscape, places full of stories waiting to be discovered, experiences waiting to be shared. 6 months ago, I would never have imagined I'd be flying across the country to lead a multi-million-dollar division launch. But 6 months ago, I was still letting other people define what I was capable of. Now, as I worked on marketing strategies at 30,000 feet, I realized something profound had shifted. It wasn't just that Catherine Morrison had given me an opportunity, it was that I'd finally given myself permission to take it. The plane flew through the night toward Portland, toward Monday morning, toward a future I was finally ready to create. And for the first time in years, I couldn't wait to see what tomorrow would bring. 3 months later, Morrison Authentic Asheville would open to full bookings and rave reviews, with revenue projections exceeded by 40%. The success would lead to accelerated timelines for the other 4 properties and Mia's promotion to VP of Boutique Operations within her first year. But more importantly, it would mark the moment when a young woman who'd been told she was useless proved that sometimes the most valuable person in the room is the one others have overlooked.